Elden Ring Barbarians of the Badlands DLC leaks online. Bandai Namco's reported ransomware attack allegedly ends up leaking titles for fiscal year 2023, including DLC for Elden Ring. Vinny, go.
This doesn't surprise me in the slightest that there's DLC, if this is true, that they're making DLC for Elden Ring. I think it's common sense at this point that they should, because that game just sold like wildfire. So many people played, love that game, so it doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I suppose Bloodborne did have DLC. Did Dark Souls 3 have DLC?
Yeah.
I think it did as well. So they're accustomed to doing this. So I'll be interested to see what this is. Is this just going to be a whole nother map area? I'm guessing that's what it's going to be. It's going to be kind of an off map or something to that effect. I'm curious to see how big is this DLC going to be. That's kind of where my mind went. What is the size of this going to be? Because Elden Ring is obviously one of the biggest games I've ever personally played.
It's the best game I've played in the last probably 10 years. And that is not an understatement. That game is so good, man. It is so good. Funny enough, it's between that and Horizon Forbidden West for my game of the year, but I mean, it's like my game of the year is already set in stone. You can't touch Elden Ring. You can't touch it. And it's so annoying. And I hate to go chalk like that, but I know that's my game of the year. If Elden Ring really does have DLC, here's where it kind of gets dicey for me. The game's perfect. It's literally perfect. They sort of nerfed some certain summons, and they do balance changes every once in a while, but the day one release of that game is as close to perfect as I've ever seen in a game. You know what I mean? There's a couple bugs, but nothing that deters you from this experience. The map is one of the most amazingly crafted maps ever. It is just oozing with detail and things to do. There is not a single section of that map that is empty or not worth exploring. I literally explored every inch of that map. So when you add DLC into the mix, does it tarnish, excuse the pun, does it tarnish that sort of perfect, I guess, package of the original game?
That's a very good point, Anthony. I think that I don't think it. Knowing From Software, I think it's a safe bet that this DLC is going to be outstanding. I would be shocked if it came out and you said, "Man, this DLC just ruins the original game or the original, map and the original feel of the game." I would be stunned if this came out and is not well received by the community and by reviewers alike. This is going to be great. I mean, they only release great things From, so I wouldn't worry about that. But I mean, I'm just curious to see how big it's going to be. Like you said, yeah. What is this going to be? What is the size of this going to be? Because if you take this with the original Elden Ring, let's say this is like 30 hours.
Right.
We're looking at like a 150-hour game. If when they release the inevitable collector's edition or the complete edition, whatever that is.
I will say this.
It's going to be daunting. Yeah.
I think it took me 135 hours to beat, but I did everything. So it's already nearing that marker. But whether the DLC, if it's even real, this seems like something that's very similar to what happened with Capcom. Do you remember that? Capcom had like all their reports leaked, and there was another hacker. I don't know if it was the same people, but anyway, so that happened with Capcom, and then all the announcements came out, and it seemed like it was all legit. So I'm excited. It seems like this is real. But anyway, that was a side note. What I was trying to say is if it's real, whether it's vast or small, it is going to be dense. I will guarantee you it will be dense because it will be more Elden Ring. And more Elden Ring means more densely packed areas to explore that have a secret lying behind every corner. So even if it's like a couple of bosses worth of content, you could still get 30 hours out of it if you wanted, because that's the way that the game sort of, that's the that's the foundation of this game, at least. And in the base game, it is dense and detailed. So that would be my response to what you're sort of asking.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we're getting it pretty soon. So I think we're going to get it probably within the next year. It says 2023. So my guess is sometime next fall, something like that. I'm excited. This kind of typically DLC announcements make me want to go back to games if I like what I'm seeing out of that DLC. So I'm hoping this will, give me that little push that I need to go back into that world, because I loved every second of it. I just got a little bit too preoccupied and maybe a little overwhelmed by the openness and the sheer amount of things to do is just unreal. Is really a special game.
And any more excuses to go back to this game, I'm down for. I love Elden Ring so much.